Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Carey Heller. Welcome to this latest episode of the podcast. Today, we're going to talk about the idea of finding balance between adapting to certain situations and working on making improvements in yourself versus getting others to accommodate for you. This specific idea may be relevant for lots of different situations and issues. I guess I'm often kind of thinking about this with ADHD as an example. So with ADHD, you certainly have situations where a lot of people with ADHD have a hard time staying organized. So maybe you're running late for things or having trouble meeting deadlines. And so, a common question becomes, how much do you work on trying to find different strategies to improve the follow-through and getting stuff done versus having others accommodate you with flexible deadlines and being able to accommodate in lots of other ways as well. What's challenging about this idea is that on the one hand, if someone is not always accommodating, for example, not changing deadlines, does that then lead you to then make changes because of that to be able to not keep missing deadlines? For some people, that might help with having that boundary, and in turn, they may do better next time. But if someone still is not able to meet those deadlines, then it doesn't really serve a direct purpose or as much of a purpose if they still end up messing up and continuing to not really make any improvements towards getting better at meeting deadlines using this example. My feeling on this is that I don't think there's really one right answer on how to do this. I think there's some situations where, first of all, I guess even if you use the example of paying taxes, I guess technically you can ask for an extension, but at some point you probably have to file and pay your taxes. So in certain situations, there's stuff that's more or less, here's the rule. There's not always a lot of flexibility, and other things where it's very easy to keep getting extensions. One of the problems, though, is, so if you look at this example from a financial perspective, if someone, gets an extension on, let's say, paying their mortgage a month, if you can do that, it's possible that it's going to get to a point where, one, you're going to have a lot more you owe at once, but you still may not be able to actually pay it all if you haven't then planned on how to do it. So just pushing stuff off without an actual plan of how to get it done. Same thing with, let's say, homework assignments. If you keep getting extensions or use extended time on homework assignments, but you're not able to catch up in some way and things keep piling up, then you create more of an issue than you had in the first place, and it's not really getting better. At the same time, using this example of homework assignments, if you sometimes use extra time to get homework assignments done, and you catch up on the weekends, and then by the end of, by Sunday night, you're all caught up on anything that you were behind on, then you essentially have used that extra time to your advantage, and it probably is very helpful. Another factor to consider here is what kind of situations you put yourself into when you have control. So as a kid, you only have so much control over your educational environment. As an adult, within reason, you can pick jobs that maybe have very flexible deadlines or don't have a lot of deadlines. Or if you need a lot of structure, have ones that give you a lot of structure so they kind of tell you what to do and you do it, as opposed to having to do a lot of planning yourself. So again, because of this, that's one way where people naturally accommodate for themselves. When it comes to others accommodating for you, I think it depends obviously on the circumstances. So if we're talking about accommodating with, let's say, a significant other, if they know that you're terrible at paying bills on time, and so they help you by being the one to take control and pay the bills, as long as they're okay with that I guess is one way of accommodating for you, or sometimes being understanding if, you forget to do certain things they ask. At the same time, I imagine for some people over time, that may lead to sort of increased frustration and resentment if, you're constantly asked, go pick up milk, do this, or, if there are bigger things for you, like for getting to pick up your own child, or something like that I imagine someone may not be quite as forgiving of if it keeps happening. All right, I would think about it this way. So think about the situations where you are able to make improvements. So if you work towards making improvements in terms of, let's say, meeting deadlines, doing things you need to do, then having those external boundaries is going to hopefully help you to make better changes and improvements in the future. I think for some things where no matter how hard you try, you can't accomplish it, if there's an alternative option that is helpful, that, like, for example, having a boss that sometimes is flexible on deadlines, if it ends up being helpful and it's not detrimental in some other way, then I think there could be a benefit of having that accommodation. So I think the idea is accommodations, or in terms of people helping you, or other modifications to maybe the general expectations, definitely have benefit in certain situations. But I think you have to weigh the pros and cons of each situation and make a decision for yourself in what are situations where you try to get some sort of accommodation, whether it's a formal one from an employer, just informal from a spouse, whatever it is, and other ones where you say, this is not going to be helpful to accommodate me, I need to be able to figure out a way to do this, and then to look at whether it's seeking professional assistance to work through, better organization, motivation, whatever it is, to be able to help with the follow through. So it's about, again, finding this balance. So, I imagine listening to this podcast, you may have come out of this thinking, I still have absolutely no idea what I should be doing in terms of when to push for someone to accommodate versus when I should just suck it up or figure out a different way to do it. And again, I think this is one where there's this as a podcast where I don't think there's a lot of, unfortunately, practical strategies in of itself that come out of this, but the idea rather of one, thinking through like this concept, but starting to make decisions for yourself, because sometimes mindset can make a big difference. If you say to yourself, this is something I need to be able to get done and I need to figure out a way to do it, and I can't have someone make an exception for me, then that's very different than determining, the situation is not as important, it's probably not a big deal, it doesn't impact anyone if someone makes an exception for me, let me try to do it. Because if you kind of pick and choose certain situations, you may end up sort of being able to compensate quite well by getting the stuff done you absolutely need to get done, but at the same time, being able to sort of have some exceptions made and then follow through and get caught up eventually if sometimes there's flexibility. So it's a matter of, again, as the title says, finding this balance and choosing for yourself what you do in different situations. All right, so I realized this podcast is a little bit different than some of my other ones, because a lot of my other ones are very practically based with, here's a strategy, here's what's going on, here's how you execute using it and try to make things better. This one, again, is more about the mindset and thinking through this idea of balance, because that often is the first step towards figuring out how do you make changes. Because if you don't know sort of what you're thinking or how to approach stuff and decide how to or what you should make changes about, it's pretty hard to just take strategies and implement them. So I hope that this is helpful in getting you thinking a little bit more about how to find this right balance for yourself. Until next time, I'm Dr. Kerry Heller.